Thanks, Patrick. Good morning, everyone. How's morale out there? Huh? You all look mesmerized when you sit up here and look at you. You're all blank face, so we'll try to motivate you here this morning. Okay, multi-domain, it's already changed its name. We used to call it multi-domain battle. Now we call it multi-domain operations. And the Army's trying to pilot this. I think you're very comfortable with what air-land battle was. And really, multi-domain operations are just an extension of air-land battle. So it's back to what Patrick said. How do you compete in the other domains? So the question becomes, why? He just talked about the character and nature, and you can debate what's changing. But I think the lethality and the speed of life out there is quicker than what our current day soldiers have ever experienced. And of course, this is the space world, this is the cyber world, this is the electromagnetic spectrum. You're talking about regional peers with significant military capabilities and the threat of the rise of a peer competitor. So we think we're going to see a sensors and fire swept battlefield that will be more complex, congested, and contested. Mass precision long-range fires, area effects, a growing and substantial cyber threat, intense information wars, and a more lethal and violent combat zone. The speed of events, we worry about this in terms of decision cycles, recognition, and action, but how much information young commanders can actually receive and the multitude of ways they're receiving it. Patrick just talked about AI, robotics, directed energy, 3D printing. All these things pose new and increased asymmetric threats. So our adversaries keep investing and trying to figure out how to outmatch us. And so that's the reasons why we think we have to modernize everything from our doctrine, organization, technology, and training. So this is what it looks like in structure. It's a framework. It's a new approach for joint military operations against, again, a sophisticated near-peer adversary. It enables maneuver, and it presents multiple options for both national leadership and joint force commanders. And it does present multiple dilemmas to our potential adversaries. But it does require a flexible and resilient ground formation that can project combat power into the land, air, maritime, space, and cyberspace domain, including electromagnetic spectrum. So our execution will be a land-based capabilities in support of our joint partners. And this is in order to do things like sink ships from land, neutralize satellites, shoot down aircraft and missiles, and degrade an adversary's ability to communicate with their own forces. So we've taken our U.S. Army Pacific. That's where we're going to pilot this, and our Army likes to pilot things, throughout their theater through really 4 lines of effort. It's a pilot program, which I'll explain here in a second, capability development, concepts and plans, and integration with our partners, which includes the Brits, includes the French, the Germans, the Canadians, and the Japanese. Our 17th Fires Brigade at Fort Lewis will be the base, that's the lethal base that we will appendage this thing to. And what you see there in that yellow box on the left-hand side is called an IQs, or an Intel, Cyber, Electronic Warfare Space Detachment of about 204 people. It has a signal, MI, space, and cyberspace units, as you can see, and their job is to synchronize and employ all those capabilities in their respective domains. So the key is how this pilot will inform us down the road to figure out what we'll look like and how much bigger, how much more maneuver, how much protection, how much aviation, other enablers that you would package with this type of an organization. We're testing it through many events. It's going to be integrated into RIMPAC, which is the largest Navy exercise in the Pacific coming up this summer, with a full command and control structure to conduct live fire exercises across Hawaii. Other joint exercises like Cyber, Blitz, and Valiant Shield will also test this system. And our Center for Army Analysis is trying to figure out through a series of war games of how to simulate operational level of employment along with the technological and operational capabilities in a 2020-2025 timeframe. For partner nations, we're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing with Army Japan and the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Forces. Actually, the JGSDF will fire an SSM-12 in RIMPAC to demonstrate cross-domain capabilities. This year's Joint Warfighter Assessment in Europe also put us in the right direction. That's where we had our U.S. 1st Division with, again, the Brits, the French, the Germans, and Canadians, and trying to figure out the MDO problem. The most significant achievement was the ability to operate, communicate on one network. That's the first time I think we've pulled that off ever. With a very clear common operator, you could go to anybody's command post, as Nick Pope and I did, and you could see the same thing in each command post. I've never seen that before. So we were going to try to replicate that same exercise in the Pacific next year. And through experiments, I'm just going to mention to you a couple of things we've learned. Some of this may seem commonsensical, but just to make sure. First, setting the theater and theater posture are critical to success. I don't believe that's different for any type of function. That doesn't change. But getting forces into the joint operating area rapidly, sustaining that force and providing the infrastructure, and again, having mature theater, networks, buildings, infrastructure are very key. Second, speed. I talked about speed of information earlier. The ability to be flexible and agile in this environment and to employ those capabilities is very, very important on a large scale. Joint and multinational integration is obviously key. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Thorough planning. Early, thorough planning to make sure you see it through, talk it through, all the way through execution. Third, you've got to kind of take a total Army approach and figure out who you can leverage to integrate, and that would be things like land-based anti-ship missiles. That would be things like runway-independent unmanned aerial systems, and of course those are also tagged with manned, unmanned, Apache, and tactical intelligence. Improved sensors, and what we're playing with is both the ground-based and elevated air defense sensors in the Pacific, and then this multi-domain artillery weapon system, which is a hypervelocity system. So how do you integrate and leverage all those capabilities? And our Army Pacific Command, in conjunction with our Training and Doctrine Command and Army Material Command, are reviewing all the ways to integrate these systems inside our existing structure to make sure we can test them. Fourth, you got to build upon existing stuff. This is not a go out and buy an unresource-free environment. We'll use existing systems, we'll use commercial systems, and of course we'll leverage what all of our partners have. But adapting a long-range strike system on existing ground force vehicles is much less expensive than developing one from scratch. Fifth, MDO mitigates risk. As we learn from dealing with peer and near-peer competitors who actually employ long-range surface-to-surface weapons, we do have the ability to deny positioning, navigation, and timing in a contested space and SEMA environment. Sixth is our planners. They struggle with joint phasing in MDO. The problem remains that obviously we're at different phases, stages based on where you are. So to that end, a joint force commander may throw out the phasing concept, where a joint force land component commander may find it useful to sequence and use the standard deploy, forcible entry, defend, attack, and consolidate gains type of progression. And finally, planning staffs appear to be wed to conventional ways of thinking. And they got to understand how to integrate this stuff, but these capabilities do not necessarily equate to formations. And that's not the way our planners tend to think right now. So how do we get the leverage and training and expertise to do this, and basically what this thing looks like? This is kind of how we see the next couple of years playing out, and this will allow us to flush out all the systems and hopefully figure this stuff out. But collectively we'll work, as we keep doing with our partners, to see how to employ this and how to work it, and we'll see where it goes, how big it gets, and how effective and capable it can be. So with that, thanks for listening. I look forward to your questions or talking about anything more you want to talk about later on. Thank you all.